So my presentation will be a mix of English and Chinese. Okay, time is now 4 p.m. and welcome everybody and good afternoon. And I'm Banders Chen, the Secretary of Surrey White Rock Community Engagement Society and the host of today's forum. 大家下午好，我是 Ben， 磐石会秘书长，也是今天的主持人啊。欢迎大家来到由磐石会举办的第10期磐石论坛，也是我们在疫情期间举办的首次线上论坛。Surrey White Rock Community Engagement Society, also known as Surrey, is a non-partisan, non-profit organization of multiple ethics with the mission to build bridges between people of all cultural heritages and through education, events, and forums to encourage immigrants of Chinese and other ethnic origins to embrace and participate in our community to enhance the Canadian multicultural identity. 磐石会是一个无党派、非盈利的多族裔组织，其宗旨是搭建沟通桥梁，促进社区融入，守护多元文化。Since its establishment in January 2019, Surrey White Rock Community Engagement Society has invited distinguished keynote speakers such as members of Parliament, BC MLA, Mayor of White Rock, and people from South Surrey White Rock Chamber of Commerce, Pisach Hospital Foundation, sources, who name a few, to our forum, interacting with and answering questions from the audience. Our topics cover the 3 levels of Canadian government, education, healthcare, as well as other issues of public concern. 尤其是在今年的1月，磐石会作为 just a second, let me play this slide. Okay, 磐石会作为蓝树里白石商会的大使，与商会共同举办的本地区第1个中国联迎新晚宴取得的巨大的成功。Okay, meanwhile, our forum is the first of its kind to provide English and Chinese interpretation to the audience. 同时，磐石论坛首创中英双语模式，每次论坛都配现场翻译，现场同步翻译，获得了大家的好评。With support and encouragement from our friends and community, the past year was a year of history making for us. 作为社区首个类似的非盈利机构，在加拿大国会和 BC 省议会上被点名肯定。Surrey was also recognized as the first organization of its kind at Canada House of Commons and BC Parliament, 获得蓝树里白石商会年度最佳非盈利机构提名 ，nominated as the most excellent non-profit organization by South Surrey White Rock Chamber of Commerce in 2019, awarded the certificate of the Coldest Night of the Year 2019 by Sources. 在此非常感谢一直陪伴和支持我们的各位会员、赞助商、义工和观众。今天我们的论坛要特别感谢半年赞助商树里丰盛牙医以及本次论坛赞助商环宇英文学院 ，and 和所有的媒体以及支持我们的媒体，他们是 Pisach News、温哥华港湾和今日加拿大。Thank you again to all our forum sponsors and the medias, of course. Also, thank you to Dr. Tinney and your team for making time out of your busy daily schedule for this event. 每次论坛的举办也离不开全体磐石会理事的默默付出和奉献。Okay, thank you to our team, the board of Surrey White Rock Community Engagement Society, the president, Cici Liang, Vice President Mark Burchell, and Edward Su, Vice Secretary Felix Zhang, Commerce and Membership Director James Yu, and CEO 魏黄。今天为大家担任线上翻译的是 Felix Zhang 和 Sophie Fong， 网络技术支持。西西，感谢3位。再请出我们今天的嘉宾 ，BC 省最大学区树里教育局总监及首席执行官 Jordan Tinney 博士给大家讲话前，再次提醒大家，在论坛过程中，我们将在对话框中翻译演讲的要点，请大家留意。如果有更多问题呢，有待最后提问环节在对话框里打出问题。本次论坛的详细中文翻译以后 就会以中文报道的方式发出，请大家关注。Now, I'm going to give the screen to today's keynote speaker, Dr. Jordan Tinney, Superintendent of Surrey Schools. Dr. Tinney, you can start your presentation now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, all. It's wonderful to be here with you virtually on your first attempt to do this online. And I want to start by introducing my colleagues who are here with me. I have Andrew Holland, is an assistant superintendent in Surrey School District and very long and deep history in Surrey. Most recently as a secondary school principal before joining us at the district office. Then I have Angela Olson, and Angela Olson is our manager for international education. And so we came here today in wanting to bring a small team to be able to answer the most questions possible for you. So with that, I want to, you've given me a number of questions. And I want to start by thanking you for, for the Surrey White Rock Community Engagement Society for bringing us together and for your mission, because we all value a strong Canadian multicultural identity. Forgive me, I'm going to take a drink of water. Excuse me. So, I have a number of questions that you've asked us to go through, and I'm hoping the best way is just for me to proceed through those questions and do the best of our ability, and I'm going to ask Angela and Andrew to answer some of these questions as well. So first and foremost, you will have read or know that Surrey is the largest school district in British Columbia, and we have 131 schools. We're a tremendously diverse, multicultural community. And so we greatly value students and our community members from all ethnic origins. And it's great to be able to share with you. So your questions that you posed had a range of things from the basics of schools to international education. And I will start with your question number one, if that's okay. So the very first question that you asked us was, for students who are on the last semester of grade 11 and are studying remotely during the pandemic, how will universities to which they will be applying treat their report cards for this semester? And I think they're learning. And how will these students be permitted to progress onto grade 12 in September if the pandemic continues? So a reminder to all of us that it is a very unusual year. Whether you're in British Columbia or Alberta or across Canada and Ontario, no matter where you are in the world, we are all impacted by COVID-19. So everyone knows that schools around the world are learning in different ways. And that's no different in Surrey. So for the students who are studying, we know that we are partnering with universities. In British Columbia, it is the Ministry of Advanced Education and Skills and Training, and we're working with them to make sure that any students transitions into post-secondary are treated in the same way they have been in the past. And I think it should give people some comfort to know that universities know that this is not just about British Columbia, it's about all over the world, because of course, universities accept students from all over the world. In terms of how will report cards be treated, report cards will be treated just exactly as they've always been treated. Our marks will be submitted in the same ways, and teachers will assess both their face-to-face learning and their remote learning, and they will make a report card at the end of the year which summarizes that learning, and they will submit it in the same way in which they have always done so. Having done that, the second part of this question is, will these students be permitted to progress on to grade 12 in September if the pandemic continues? And we know that the pandemic will continue likely. And yes, absolutely, we expect that students will progress on to their next grade as they always have done. The other piece is that we want students to know during this time that we take their learning very seriously, that their online learning matters. And starting June 1st, all of the learning that they will do when they return to school face-to-face, again, if they choose to return to school face-to-face, that learning will matter as well. So absolutely, students will be able to achieve in the same ways and progress on to grade 12 in the same way. So I hope that answers your question number one. The second question that you had was talking about how the online instruction is being handled. And you are asking that some elementary school teachers are not giving online instruction, but simply giving out some assignments. And can there be some sort of direction to teachers to do more teaching online with a guaranteed amount of instructional time? So in British Columbia, there are two really important pieces to this question. One, teachers have a great amount of professional autonomy with how the curriculum is delivered. It's a really important concept to understand education in British Columbia. That means that if I am teaching grade 4, or if I am teaching physics 11, that I get to choose how to deliver that curriculum. And if Mr. Holland or Miss Olson was delivering the same subjects, they get to choose their own way to deliver. So the same content, but I get to choose the instructional methods. So to the question, we cannot direct teachers to do more online teaching because the teachers get to make their choices. The guaranteed amount of instructional time is part of our next phase of the pandemic. So starting in June 1st, the Ministry of Education has asked that all students in kindergarten to grade 5 receive face-to-face instruction up to 50%. Actually, they say 2 to 3 days a week, the equivalent of that. And for students in grades 6 through 12, they're asking for an equivalent of 1 full day a week of face-to-face instruction. And so it is still a guideline, but remembering that the teachers will balance their face-to-face instruction with their online instruction. And we have in legislation by the government a certain amount of instructional time that must be given in a week. And in the pandemic, that has been difficult for us to monitor and track because, of course, our students are home and teachers are delivering in varying ways. So as we move to the next phase, you will see percentages of time given as an expectation, but on the online piece, it will remain under the direction of the teachers for the curriculum. So I hope that helps. For question number 2. Question number 3, I'm going to read it and then I will ask my colleague Angela Olson to answer. It's about international education. And it is some of the existing international students, as well as others, who have been accepted and paid for their fees and are waiting for the reopening of these application centers to apply for permits for the upcoming semesters. It has been requested that some of them arrive in Canada in August. What should they do if they are late arriving for registration due to a delay in their visa. And over to you, Angela. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Well, actually, I can answer this in maybe two parts, because we have two different types of students. We have students who are currently studying with us now, who will be returning next year, and then we have students who would be new to our program. So when we're talking about returning students who maybe went home and want to come back for their studies to commence in September, they actually, by and large, have a study permit that is valid and typically valid until September 30th. So the way that the Quarantine Act has been set up with travel restrictions, anybody who had a study permit in place or a written acknowledgement of a study permit in place prior to March 18th can return to Canada without delay, much like a Canadian citizen can. So these students will be simply returning on an already valid and existing study permit. So the only issue that they would have would be sorting out their plane flights and arriving in time for their 14 days of self-isolation. So we're not typically worried about those students coming back later. But that being said, on their official letter of acceptance, we do have a last date to start school, and that typically is 2 to 3 weeks after school starts. And now, of course, with the pandemic, we're going to be somewhat flexible, of course, so we deal with those on a case-by-case basis. But we're not expecting a delay for our returning students if they're able to get a flight back and arrange for self-isolation. Now, for the new students, this is a little bit up in the air right now, because new students would be right now trying to get a new study permit. And with those students, I know there's concern over the VAC, or visa application centers, being closed. But the good news is that right now, according to IRCC and Global Affairs, the VAC centers, specifically throughout China and many other countries, are open or are opening. Many of them you have to have an appointment only, but typically the study permit application is done online, and just going in maybe perhaps for an interview and for providing the biometrics. But we're not expecting much of a delay there. Really what the delay will be is something that's out of our hands right now, and that's whether they can enter the country, which the Quarantine Act doesn't allow right now, because their study permit wouldn't have been valid prior to March 18th. But we'll continue to be flexible, of course, with start dates, in the hopes that all new students who want to get here are able to do so. The other thing I should add to that as well is we are piloting this year. Our Welcome Center has already been doing this with our ministry-funded international students and new immigrant families. We're piloting doing our ELL assessments online using Microsoft Teams rather than in person. So at least when students arrive, they will have already had their assessment done. We should have them already timetabled for school. So other than their 14 days of isolation, they should be able to expedite getting back into school as soon as possible. Hope that answers the question.
Sounds great. Thank you, Angela. The fourth question was about evaluation. And the question was, how do teachers evaluate students' results for their online study? Is it based solely on assignments turned in? And what impact will these results and scores have on a student's application for university? We've heard that universities treat scores from online courses and in-person classes in different ways. Is this true? So teachers evaluate student results for their online study in much the same way that they evaluate when the students are in class. Of course, one major difference is teachers will want to be very careful to know whether the student is the one actually doing the work, and the student is able to demonstrate the skills. I can tell you that my son is working online right now, hopefully on mathematics downstairs, and he continues to get tests and assignments just as he would if he were in class. His teachers are also doing video conferencing with him, so they get to evaluate his abilities on the tasks. So what impact will these results and scores have on application for a university? Again, we would think that there would be no impact. And because again, schools across British Columbia and Canada are in the same situation, and we want to make sure that students aren't penalized for the online time. Your question is, we've heard that universities treat scores from online courses and in-person classes in different ways. Is that true? We have heard these rumors, and I think that when people consider this, they're not considering more the regular large-scale school districts and programs. There may be some online programs that universities treat in different ways, but my belief would be those would be very small in number. So we would expect that universities would treat scores from our courses in the same way that they've treated all marks for all courses. So on to question number 5. And question number 5, I'll also ask for Angela's help. I'll read it. Under the current state of emergency, an international student's parent, under the current state of emergency, an international student's parent who holds a V1 visa is not permitted to accompany the student to enter Canada when the student returns to school in August. It is illegal to have a minor unattended in Canada, and it's hard to find a homestay family and guardian on such short notice. As this is a widespread problem for international students, can the Surrey School District help to address this issue with the appropriate authorities? And again, over to Mrs. Olson.
Yeah, so actually a number of my colleagues from across Canada belong to an association called CAPC, Canadian Association of Public Schools International. And we are working hard and lobbying hard with IRCC and Global Affairs to not forget the parents when we have students that are typically coming from overseas with their parent. We actually have in our district 47% of our international student population lives with a parent, and there's many others that live with aunts or uncles. But then the rest of them are typically in a homestay situation. So of course, any students that's coming without a parent and residing with their child in Canada, they're having to identify, of course, a custodian. So we at the Surrey School District do not provide custodian or homestay services, but we work with a number of professional companies. We list a number of professional companies on our website that provide this specialized support. And these companies, they will help students with their custodianship and help with identifying who will be custodian by way of notarized documentation, which would then allow the student to come without a parent. This may be a temporary measure, or it may be for the full year, depending on what happens with IRCC in allowing the parents to come back. But a number of these companies, these are professional service providers, and they meet the Ministry of Education's K-12 International Student Homestay Guidelines. These are companies such as Harmony Homestay or White Rock Homestay, MLI Homestay. They are working very closely with those same stakeholders I mentioned, CAPC and IRCC and Global Affairs, to share excellent practices to get ready for these students to come. They are looking at different ways to go about the self-isolation and how we can address students coming here without a parent and being able to have them isolate for 14 days ahead of potentially going into their homestay or with their homestay. So while we can certainly do our best in lobbying for parents to, of course, not fall under the travel ban, we do have, of course, the option for students to come without their parent and stay in homestay.
Great. Thank you, Angela. I'll read the next question. I'll ask Assistant Superintendent Holland to answer it. And it's about how students get their diplomas at the end of the summer. So how and when will graduating grade 12 students receive their diplomas this summer? Over to you, Andrew.
Thanks for that, Dr. Tinney. We anticipate no change in how graduating students will receive their diplomas and the timeline for that. Usually our graduating students receive their diplomas approximately the first week of August, and they're mailed home. And we will be doing the same this year, and we do not anticipate any delays.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent. And on to the next question, which is about our current situation and the reopening of schools. Has a timetable been determined for the reopening of all schools, including daycares, elementary and secondary? So yes, as you know, that on just announced on Friday, that on June 1st, all schools in British Columbia will open for students in all grades. And as well, they've been relaxing the requirements for daycare. So daycares will be in operation again. And as I said earlier, so starting on June 1st, there are some really important pieces for people to understand. One, some parents are very nervous about their children returning to school in the pandemic. And so the Ministry of Education is leaving it to be the choice of parents whether they send their children to school in June or not for the face-to-face component. So on June 1st, you will get the choice to have your child go to school, and the amount of school that they will receive face-to-face varies depending on what grade they're in. In kindergarten to grade 5, they will go to school the equivalent of 2 to 3 days a week. And in grade 6 through to grade 12, they will go to school the equivalent of 1 day a week. And we don't anticipate that changing before June 30th. And then in September, we will have to see where we are in the pandemic, and if the number of cases of COVID-19 goes up, then we may be in a situation to have to go back to where we are now. And if the number of cases keeps going low, and we know we've been very successful with very low numbers now, then we may be in a position to open as we have been in the past with all of our students in September. But time will tell, and parents will certainly have that information well in advance of opening day in September. So thank you for that question. The next question is about our school district's preparation for COVID-19. And does Surrey School District have a protective measures plan to guard against the spread of COVID-19 once students return to school? And then the second part of the question is, once a vaccine is available, will it be mandatory for all teachers, staff, and students to be vaccinated? So we absolutely have a plan to guard against the spread of COVID-19. The British Columbia Centre for Disease Control has issued very clear guidance around what the reopening of schools looks like. And these include things like making sure there are fewer students in schools, making sure class size is smaller, making sure we have increased cleaning, making sure that we stagger the start and stop time of school to limit the number of students and how they move in a school. On the increased cleaning, it will be substantial. And so there are a number of measures in place, including really strict guidelines around what do you do if someone is showing any symptoms of a cold or the flu or COVID-19. Those people, whether they are students or staff, will have to stay home and remain at home. So we absolutely have a protective measures plan, and that will be in place for students to come back to school. When a vaccine is available, will it be mandatory? That wouldn't be our decision, and I don't know. I can anticipate that there will be a number of people for whom the vaccine will be mandatory, but I simply wouldn't know at this time. We would have to wait and see. So thank you. I'll answer now question number 9, which is about our school construction. And the question is, how is construction at a Grandview Heights Secondary School progressing? And has an enrollment scheduled for new students been determined? And have new South Surrey White Rock High School boundaries been confirmed? And next, will the IB and French immersion programs between the 3 secondary schools be realigned? And what resources and support will be available for teaching staff? So a number of questions there. So on the construction of Grandview Heights Secondary School, we met today. I'm a member of an executive project board which helps oversee the construction of all projects. It is going well, and we still anticipate that it will be open for students to be in session in September 2021. And if you go to our Surrey Schools webpage, you can see pictures, including drone flybys of how the school is doing in its construction and how it's progressing. I think the question about the enrollment schedule for new students, I think the question refers to the new students for Grandview Heights. The boundaries have been determined for the school, and we know which students will be going there from which catchment areas, but we haven't determined a schedule for those students yet. If it refers to new students for next year, we would do those schedules with our current schools as we do every year. The new boundaries for the new secondary schools have been confirmed, and if you go to our homepage, on Surrey Schools homepage, you can find those boundaries and know which students would be captured to go to Grandview Heights Secondary. And we went through quite a consultation process last fall to make sure that parents were informed about that process. And will the IB and French immersion programs be realigned? No, they won't. There are no changes to the IB program or the French immersion program. And so the resources and support that are available will be our traditional resources and support as we currently offer to our French immersion programs across the district and to our IB programs. So question 10. I'll ask Assistant Superintendent Holland to join me on this one because he is responsible for a very large area of Surrey, which is growing very rapidly in Cloverdale, Clayton, but I'll begin. So the question is, with Surrey population growth being the highest in BC and increasing development and higher density neighborhoods, how is the Surrey School District coping with overcrowded classrooms and continuing the use of portables throughout the city? Are there any solutions on the horizon? So the solution is to build more schools and build them fast. We have 8 projects that are currently underway in Surrey. And again, I know that because of the meeting today, we reviewed all of those 8 projects. But even with those 8 projects, portables are still going to be a challenge for us. And maybe I'll ask Assistant Superintendent Holland to talk about the portables in Clayton, for example, and what the new schools opening in Clayton will do to reducing portables. You're on mute, Andrew.
Thank you, Jordan. We do have a number of portables at the elementary schools in the Clayton area. In one area in particular, we have 40 portables between 3 elementary schools. However, we're opening 2 new elementary schools in the next couple of years. So that will reduce the number of portables down to about 14 in that area. So the new construction is really helping us in reducing portables, but Surrey is growing so fast that we need to continue to advocate for more capital projects. We've also employed some other strategies. For example, we're not expanding any programs of choice until we have a reduction of portables in the district.
So in addition to that, in terms of coping with overcrowding, we're not just building schools right now, and thank you, Assistant Superintendent Holland, but to let the group on the phone know, we're also acquiring property to build schools so that we have the property now. And this is one of the ways in which we've really improved our construction. So we have all of these projects on the go, but we are opening another new school in Grandview that is just going very soon to be approved by the Ministry of Education. Again, it will be by the Grandview Pool. And then we've already acquired property, a large piece of property further east in Grandview in the Darts Hill area. We've also acquired another large piece of property out in the Redwood Heights area in, again, far east Grandview. So as that area grows and grows very quickly, we're not just building schools as fast as we can, but we're also purchasing the land far in advance so that we can get the schools built quickly when those areas start to develop. Thank you for that question, and thank you, Andrew. And your next question, number 11, folds very nicely into that. You say, with varying growth rates for the different communities in Surrey, how does the Surrey School District work with the City Planning Department in determining the allocation of schools and teacher recruitment? So I mentioned that I'm part of an executive project board that oversees all projects in Surrey. So that was a new group we formed 2 years ago, I believe now. And the senior manager in the city of Surrey sits on that group with us. It's a very small group. So we have the top person in the city meeting with us every month about every project, right down to things like the projections for the number of students we see coming in, to making sure we're taking care of permits for building so that we can go quickly, to making sure that our plans align with what are called the neighborhood concept plans of the city. So we work really closely with the city's planning department around all aspects of allocations of schools and new construction projects. We don't work with the city at all on teacher recruitment. Teacher recruitment is simply something that is our responsibility. But again, the new schools that are coming online, and the growth of our city is an important part of that planning for us. So that really helps. So on to the next question. Which really is about personal protective equipment. Recently, some high traffic grocery stores have required shoppers to wear masks when they enter the store. As closed indoor sites with high volumes of students, will Surrey schools require students to wear masks at school? No, we will not, because we look to the advice of our provincial health officer and the British Columbia Centre for Disease Control, and they recommend against masks for children. And so that is why we will not be requiring students to wear masks. It is the same requirement, or the same recommendation for adults from the BC Centre for Disease Control. So we also won't require adults to wear masks. But we also recognize that wearing masks is a personal choice. So if staff or students desire to wear masks to school, that's fine. That's not, that's a personal choice. It's not ours, but the school district will not be requiring people to wear masks. But again, if there was new direction from the government to do that, then we would implement that. So thank you. Your last question is about COVID. As we now know that young children can transmit and carry the COVID-19 virus, how are you planning to keep them safe when they don't understand the concept of or practice of social distancing? So it's a great question. The information that we have, and if the society would like, after this, I'm happy to make available the documents that inform us about children and their rates of transmission and infection. But the Centre for Disease Control and the Public Health Officer tells us that the information we have is there are no documented cases of transmitted COVID-19 from children to adults. And so they view the symptoms as being very minor, and they view the transmission rates as being very, very low. And yet this is an area as well that they acknowledge they want to do more research. And I know that in the news lately, we see stories of links from children potentially to COVID-19 and inflammatory diseases. So we would be guided by the Centre for Disease Control. And right now, if there is a good thing about COVID-19, it is that the children seem to be very low infection rate and mild symptoms. So that is the information we have. But that being said, there is no question that children who are very young, personally, I don't believe can grasp the concept of social distancing, especially if they're 5 or 6 years old. So we will have to work with our children very clearly around the social distancing that works for them. The public health officer and the Centre for Disease Control have modified their guidelines from 2 meters to limited physical contact. So they recognize that very young children don't understand the concept or practice of social distancing, but we will be working to limit contact. The other thing that we will be doing, of course, is doing things like not sharing supplies, not sharing food, and most importantly, if children do show symptoms, even of the common cold, that they need to be home and to stay home. So it's an important question because the information we have is that young children are not or do carry very mild symptoms and are not transmitters. But of course, there's a lot of unknowns as well. So those were the questions I had. Unless there are more questions, we're happy to answer questions, but I hope that has touched base on many things.
Well, Dr. Tinney, Mark Burchell here. And Mr. Holland and Mrs. Olson. Before we move on to questions, because I noticed that there are some questions that are cropping up from the audience along the chat line, and we'll be accepting more questions. If anybody has a question, now is the good time to be putting in the chat line, and we'll be asking the team. But before we move to the questions, we just want to acknowledge that you folks are on the front line, just like a lot of other people that are on the front line during this pandemic, working hard to keep our children safe as you at the same time try to get them back to school and find innovative ways to educate them at a time when they're having all kinds of challenges. And to show our appreciation, we would like to welcome you, the three of you. If we could just go back a screen there, please, Ben. We'd like to welcome the three of you as honorary members of the Surrey White Rock Community Engagement Society, and we have a certificate of membership for you, Mr. Tinney, and we knew that you were going to be here, but we didn't know that Andrew and Angela were going to be here, but we'll create a certificate, and they are honorary members of our society too. So we'll somehow figure a way to get this to you physically, but we wanted you to see what it looks like there, and we just want you to know how much we very much appreciate. There's over 60 people on today's Zoom. Most of them are challenged by by language to be able to understand some of the things that are going on. So your presentation has been very revealing. So thank you very much for being with us today.
Well, thank you very much. On behalf of Angela and Andrew and myself, we made the time because it is important to reach out to the community, particularly where language is a barrier. And we value so much the multicultural nature of our district, and we wanted to do all we can to answer people's questions and put their minds at ease in a time when it is tricky for people.
But normally at a time like this in a presentation, you would be getting a wonderful applause for such a great presentation. So we'll give you a virtual applause. So you got that, but we'll now move on to the questions that have been coming on our chat line, and I think Ben, are you conducting that portion, or is that James?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Tinney and Mr. Andrew Holland and Mrs. Angela Olson. Great work, and thank you again. And now here we have a question from here. Okay. One of the participants here. So Mr. Tinney just mentioned about the curriculum. It's up to the teacher's choice, and they can arrange the schedule for themselves. But the question is, how come they cannot just teach as what happened to those private schools in Surrey, where teachers just follow the curriculum online? Thank you.
So I hope I understand the question clearly. So different schools do different things. In independent schools in British Columbia work under different legislation. So it is totally possible that an independent school could say, in our school, it's going to be 40%, time doing this, and 50% time doing this, and 10% doing that. That's not the way it is in the public system. So I just want to be clear about the curriculum is the standard, but it is how it is delivered that is the autonomy of the classroom teacher. So it is just a different way in which the two systems operate. We still expect the same curriculum to be delivered. It's just that we wouldn't be prescriptive at the time. So I hope that answers your question.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. And we have another question here. I hope you have enough. Okay. I think this is going to be the last question anyway. So, is there any plan on the schedule of students who returns to school?
Yes. So I'll take this question, meaning about the schedule for if you have a child, for example, in grade 9 or grade 10, what would their schedule be? I believe that's what the question means. So if I'll answer it for both an elementary student and a secondary student. So if a student is in elementary, again, in kindergarten to grade 5, you can expect them to go to school 2 to 3 days a week. And by the end of this week, the school district would be communicating that schedule out to parents. So we're still developing that. We have to submit a plan to the Ministry of Education, but parents should know by the end of this week. But again, you should count on 2 to 3 days a week for kindergarten to grade 5. If you are in grade 6 or 7, you should be counting on 1 day a week. And if you are in grades 8 through 12, you should be counting on 1 day a week. And that schedule then will begin on June 1st. And again, it's parents' option to send their children, but schools will be sending out a timetable, like a schedule for what the instruction looks like on their particular school, and parents then will be able to make the choice. But again, they should know by May 22nd, you should know. And so in the following week, you will be able to make your choice about what you wish to do.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tinney. So I know your time is so limited and so precious, and thank you for that. So can I ask one more question? I'm not sure if it's okay to ask here, but I got to ask that because I see all those whole bunch of questions still coming out. So we don't have enough time to answer all those questions here. Is it possible that down the road we collect all the questions in the following days and send an email to you? Then you can answer the questions by email to us so that everybody gets the answers to their questions.
We would be happy to do that.
Okay, thanks so much. Sounds great. And that's so much for today's forum. And hopefully we will have any chance in the future to work together. And thank you, everyone. And hope you have a wonderful time in the rest of the day.
Thank you very much. And we really appreciate the honorary membership. And you have a great day. And everyone stay healthy.
You too. Thank you, Dr. Tinney.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.我们盘思会的team 还待一会儿吧，把这些问题看能不能都把它收录下来。
对，盘思会的成员请多
请留步啊，盘思会成员请留步。我现在停掉 recording 了。OK。